Hello everyone and everything, and welcome back to more Hollow Knight. In the last episode, we finally achieved 100% completion, which is excellent news because it allows us to start focusing on that extra 12%, which is extremely difficult and time consuming without having to worry about achieving that 20-hour completion time limit. We also found this area called Godhome, which is filled with rematches against the many foes that we have faced over our long journey here in Hallownest, which is really fun. And in this episode, we're going to start exploring it a little more thoroughly. First things first, I want to go and fill out every single pedestal of foes that we have already fought. Crystal Guardian, Umu, the Traitor Lord, something unknown. If we inspect something unknown, it gives us a hint on where to find that boss. I serve my queen inside her dreams. Interesting. There are indeed still bosses we have yet to find. I await the lighting of the lantern. Here's one that we just fought last episode for the first time. Oro and Mato, the Nail Masters. All of our dream foes should be right over here. We seem to be missing this one. I lie dreaming at the edge of the world. What about you? Marmu! No eyes! Ooh, this one's big. Oh, the Watcher Knights. The Dung Defender, Soul Master, and some of them get these little sigils next to them. It's the Dream symbol, and if we hit it, it changes from the Soul Masters to the Soul Tyrant. And they all have their own descriptions. The Soul Master is the covetous god of soul. The Soul Tyrant is the frenzied god of mortality. So, what is all this for? Well, like I said last episode, it's basically for practice. The main event here in Godhome are the boss rushes, like the Pantheon of the Master that we did last episode. The goal is to beat those, climb your way to the top, fight a new boss that is not out among the overworld, and conquer them as well. Beating these bosses is not just a matter of scraping by. You cannot be clumsy in order to fight 10 bosses in a row. Because if you are, and you just scrape by on one, what are you going to do with the next one when you only have a mask or two left? So you really need to know all of these bosses, which is what this area is for. It is for learning them. To that end, we just fought the Gruz Mother on Attuned difficulty, but there's also Ascended difficulty. If we challenge a boss on Ascended difficulty, this is essentially a remix of the fight, with some rather significant changes, as well as some heavy boosts to both their HP and their damage. When fighting an Ascended, everything does double damage, even spikes, which in any other case, even against a boss, even in a boss arena, where the boss is doing 2 damage, their spikes would typically only do 1, but Ascended basically cuts our defense in half, as opposed to cutting the enemies. Or doubling the enemies. You got stuck in the corner. I remember saying in my original bio that very rarely happens. So the large increase in HP is a pretty significant factor. Gruz Mother there, packing 945. Absolutely significant. But then, after beating a boss on Ascended difficulty, you have the ability to challenge them on Radiant difficulty. Fighting a boss on Radiant difficulty requires complete and total knowledge of them. And even one misstep does all of your health. It does not matter how much you have. We go in with 20 masks, and even that would not withstand a single hit. So, when fighting a Radiant boss, It's important to consider the ability to overcharm. It's not always necessary, but it is something to keep in mind. Since any hit will do you in anyway, you might as well take whatever advantages you can. I like this setup, personally. Strength, the Shaman Stone, the Mark of Pride, and Soul Eater. Gives you the ability to do a lot more spells. Soul Eater is essentially overkill in most situations. But fighting the Gruzmother here in her revamped arena is very odd, since she does have these 3 platforms surrounded by spikes. All you really need to know, though, is that the distance between each platform is exactly the distance of a single dash. You can dash from the center of one to the center of another. And as long as you're saving your shadow dashes for the attacks, oops, you can pretty reasonably just take her right out. That being said, I'm only human. But I am committing here. I am planning, mind you, on beating every boss on Radiant. Don't worry about doing that as well. There isn't even an achievement for that. The only reward you get for beating them all in Radiant is entirely bragging rights. Even still, I do recommend trying. Try and beat every single boss on Radiant, especially in preparation for doing the Pantheons. The Pantheon of the Master, if you're struggling, contains the Gruzmother, the Vengefly King, the Moss Charger, Hornet Protector, the False Knight, ouch, Gorb, the Dung Defender, Mawlek, and of course, Oro and Mato. And, as long as you have reached Oro and Mato at the 10th stage of that Pantheon, you can still challenge them in here. You don't have to have beaten them. So you can get as much practice as you need without needing to run all the way through all the bosses. Now, my biggest recommendation when fighting a Radiant boss, if you are struggling... There we go. That took a lot more tries than it should have, but I'm also talking, so I'm cutting myself some slack on that. If you are ever struggling with a Radiant boss, the biggest recommendation I can make is to simply dodge. Try and see how long you can last without dying. Don't worry about doing damage, just avoid the attacks. That is the best way you can learn the attack patterns. And then you can think about adding on damage. So, in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and take out all 10 of those bosses and try and radiant them today, and that's what we're gonna do today. So while we're doing that, taking care of all that, let's start thinking about what the heck is even going on. Where are we? What is this place? Godhome is so strange. You can take it at face value as just a series of boss rushes, and so far we don't have nearly all the information, but there are a few key elements of it to keep in mind. The Godseeker herself seemed to say that this place is about attuning, ascending, and discovering more powerful foes. We got the God Tuner when we very first entered this place, which gives us the ability to essentially discover more powerful foes. When we beat one, we become attuned to them, and they gain a pedestal here in the Hall of Gods, allowing us to ascend with them, fight them until they become stronger, until we fight them at their absolute most radiant strongest. And that's all that we're really going to go over for now. In the meantime, the Ascended Vengefly King is very, very interesting. We have 2 of them here. And this is probably, I believe this is the only time. This is probably the most significant change in an Ascended boss fight. Most of them don't actually make significant changes. Like Gruzmother gets the new battlefield. The Vengefly King gets a partner in crime, which, by the way, only has, I don't remember off the top of my head exactly how much less health they have, but the one on the right at the start of the fight has significantly less health. Much like with the Blobbles, I really just don't recommend trying to focus on one. Just do what attacks you can take what hits, take in what advantages, or, jeez, what am I trying to say? Take advantage of what attack windows you can get, and the fight should be over before too long. Nail pogos in this fight are your absolute best friend. There's basically nothing they can do in order to stop you from hitting them while you're up in the midair, because they always swoop down low to the stage. They don't target you on a horizontal axis. So that's that one. And I did just go ahead and beat that one Radiant, but it doesn't count because it wasn't on Radiant difficulty. There is no difference between Ascended and Radiance, except for the damage, which is admittedly a really big difference. But the only difference is damage. They have the exact same HP they would have, the exact same attack patterns, no significant changes like the Partners in Crime thing. Everything is the same. So definitely try and keep that in mind. Sorry, I'm having trouble trying to not concentrate. This is admittedly one of the tougher fights. Any fight where you have multiple foes that don't attack in a pattern is definitely going to remind me of the Watcher Knights. And it does require some decent focus in order to watch them carefully. Luckily for us, this fight is just about wrapped up, and there he goes. That's 2 down. Just for fun, before we fight the Moss Charger, I'm going to change my charms around a bit. I'm going to equip Heavy Blow, Quick Slash, Steady Body, and Mark of Pride. And this will basically just allow us to completely obliterate this fight as soon as he charges along the ground. So give him just a second to do that. And, oop, wait. No. There we go. Hang on, I had to get my rhythm in there. Back, I say. Back to the wall. And that is all it takes. Of course, the attuned varieties are the ones that we fight in the arenas, but the ascended ones are excellent practice. It can be very tempting, not against the Moss Charger, of course, to equip some improved healing, like Deep Focus and Quick Focus, but really it's just not necessary at all. Ouch. And luckily for us, Moss Charger, nothing really gets easier than this particular foe. I don't know why I jumped over there like that. That was a mistake. But that one's down. And of course we noticed there were no major changes there between Ascended and Attuned for the Moss Charger, just HP. Now I will say, because of how the rhythm ends up working, it can be very difficult to take on 850 HP in a single cycle of the massive Moss Charger. So in that situation, don't be afraid to jump out and just wait for better opportunities. But 2 cycles should be more than enough. And the whole time that we are doing that, we are filling out a really nice looking checklist here. Gruzmother, Vengefly King, massive Moss Charger. What say we take on the False Knight next? Now, one disadvantage that you have when practicing in here is that you're always guaranteed to enter each fight with with 0 soul. There is nothing you can do to bring in soul from the outside. So every soul that you have is going to have to be earned in the fight itself. And that's one advantage that you will have inside the arena itself. But very easy to top off your soul against the False Knight. Ouch. Easy peasy. It's just not fair how weak he is to this spell. We can completely obliterate him. I think that's it, yeah? Yeah, it is. funny thing about him, his armor is what gives soul, not the maggot itself, but hitting the armor is what counts as hitting it with the Dream Nail. That one doesn't have lore ramifications. That's just how it is. I think that's just coding. Going into Ascended, the increased HP of the False Knight is going to make a pretty big difference here, especially on the first phase, which is, in essence, is the only one you really have to do. But even on the subsequent phases, we cannot as easily just take on an entire phase with a single set of 3 Abyss Shrieks. Even with... Oh, shoot! Oh, no! I messed up! Alright, hang on. We're just gonna do the first phase again. It's a good thing this isn't Radiant, otherwise that greed definitely would have cost me. Not too much, though. Alright, so we'll see just how much damage we can do. Might have to get out of the way, but once we take on those, we can bridge the damage with some of the barrels that he drops down. And the phase is still cut super duper short. Alright, now let's have a little easier bit of a time here. It's a little tougher to cheese all this soul out of him if he's up against a corner like he was. Alright, we can launch some spells, some Vengeful Spirits, and that's it. Now, just do it without getting hit. Mind you, the False Knight is definitely one of a few bosses which is entirely meant to be fought without the dash. He does have some of the slowest telegraphs in the entire game. So it is very easy to just wail on him as much as you need to do. Alright, let's see if we can't... This time we're not going to get greedy. We're going to go ahead and just do 1 hit on his armor in between each Dream Nail. Make sure he stays down. It's kind of adorable, just watching him. Oh, I don't know why I did it that time. Bam, bam, bam. Oh, shoot. Yeah, I got greedy. Now, I gotta say, I hope you liked this game's bosses, because if you didn't, Godhome is not gonna be your cup of tea. But come on, this game's bosses are amazing. The effort that's gone into all of them. They all have such unique character. Most of them have unique themes. Every single one of them just feels so satisfying to master, and that is what this entire area asks you to do. It's nothing short of absolute mastery, which is very fun for a certain kind of masochistic person like myself. Now, as we're going through and taking on, hitting him with as many Dream Nails as we can, I did not Dream Nail many, if any, bosses in the main game. This is a great place to rectify that. It is very easy in a completely consequence-free environment to try and learn the thoughts of as many bosses as you can. I highly recommend it. Just equip Dream Wielder and see who's thinking what. In fact, I think I'm going to go ahead and equip Dream Wielder instead of Grub Song and do just that as we head into our fight against Hornet, because she is pretty interesting. Now, it was impossible to have the Dream Nail by the time we fought her originally in Green Path, so I don't believe she has had any specific thoughts to her way back when, but here she has unique thoughts that show that she is aware of the fact that this is not real. This is a dream. Do they watch us struggle? Do I haunt your dreams, or do they haunt mine? Once again, though, just like the False Knight, this is a boss which is meant to be fought without the dash, and so having the dash is basically cheating. We can completely wail on her with everything that we've learned. No problem whatsoever. Now, in this form, she has 1,250 health, which is an awful lot. And that ends up being the biggest issue with most of the Ascended and Radiant bosses. It's not really about how well you know the attacks, but how well do you know the attacks repeatedly. These fights can take a long time, or at least it can definitely feel like a long time when you're in the fight itself, when you're in the moment. So, in order to bridge that gap, I highly recommend Strength. There's almost no reason not to use it. And in combination with having the most powerful nail, it is going to make all of these bosses quite a bit shorter. Now feel free to be just as careful as we once were when we are facing off against Hornet on Radiant. Because even though she's still an early game boss, she is still very quick and nimble compared to most of the bosses in this game. Something I don't believe I ever mentioned. Whoa, that was close. Walking forwards as ever remains the most dangerous tactic in her tool belt. Okay, hold on, it's me in editing. I just noticed something while I was watching this back. Did you see that? Could not do that again if I tried. Okay, moving on. Luckily, her stagger stats are remarkably high. Woo! And there's another stagger. I should be nail arting more against the stagger, but that's alright. Maybe only cost me a couple seconds. Next up, upstairs, we've got the Soul Warrior. Now, of course, you do not, under any circumstances, have to fight them on Attuned in order to unlock them on Ascended. But the game does track whether you've beaten them on Attuned and Ascended separately. You don't get credit for doing both, just for beating them on Ascended. So that is one reason why I'm going ahead and doing this way. Now for Ascended, we do have some slightly different changes. Once again, like with the one we fought guarding the yikes, the what am I saying? The Shade Soul. This one summons Fall Leaves, which does make things significantly more complicated. We can no longer fight this entire fight quite as easily by just staying grounded and Shade Souling exclusively through the Soul Warrior. But just like with the Broken Vessel and all before, try and prioritize the follies that he summons. And it shouldn't take too much longer. Now that was pretty clumsy for an Ascended fight, so let's see how we do on Radiant. Now in this fight, since we are Shade Cloaking so often, it could be a smart idea to go ahead and equip Sharp Shadow. Get some cheeky extra damage in while dashing through him. But not at all necessary, of course, and I still am not overly fond of that charm. But to put it simply, being able to coincide an attack against the folly... Whoa, that was close. Being able to coincide an attack against the folly and the guy is pretty nice. I don't recommend using too many spells on this fight. He says using a spell. That's that one. Next up, the Dung Defender. Now this is probably where not having any soul to speak of hurts us the most, because we can't start this fight by breaking him out of the ground. But that's okay. And that's that. No significant changes on the Ascended difficulty. You do have to be very careful. Probably this arm swipe is the attack that is most likely to kill you, I would say. It's very easy to get kind of greedy relative to the distance of him while he's chucking those dung balls at you. But just take your time and it shouldn't be a problem. will freely cut you off from anything that... Oh, no! Oh, right, this isn't Ascended. Ow. But that's that. Of course, I hardly feel I need to mention it at this point. These, of course, are also Follow the Dream rules, where they don't break anything, even in Radiant mode. Now, Radiant Dung Defender does have the potential of being quite tough. He does have all his projectiles once again, so just be sure to bear in mind the almost completely safe zone that is the corner if you should ever need a moment to breathe. But I think we're not the ones who are going to need that moment here. Unfortunately for him, he'll get no sympathy from us. Oop, that's probably going to most likely hit us, maybe... Nope, okay. Bam! And you should be just about done. That's it there! Dung Defender down. Now let's head over to the Dream Warrior District and take on Gorb, why don't we? Now Gorb is definitely among the most simple bosses in the game, to the point that I honestly have very little to say about this rematch now that it's the third time we're doing it. Luckily for us, well, maybe not for us, but luckily for me at least, his Ascended form has quite a bit more to talk about, now that the arena is significantly more treacherous. Avoiding all of his spikes is nowhere near as effortless when the ground we have to avoid them on is limited. So this is actually a really clever way to increase the difficulty of this fight. I feel like they could have very easily gone the Vengefly route and just made it so that each Ascended fight has more foes to contend with, but they didn't. They tried to be pretty creative with a lot of them. Of course, some of them don't have changes, and that's okay too. But this one does, and it's a change that I honestly appreciate, even if it does cause some problems for us down the line. In the meantime, that one's done. Fighting against Radiant, probably the only situation I can imagine that you can avoid getting hit where it would otherwise have spelled doom would be if you're not sure which direction he's sending the spikes out. What you can do as a sort of panic to give yourself some time to breathe is just do a quick descending dark on one of the platforms while you orient yourself to how his spears are coming. That would be maybe one of my only recommendations here. But it's hardly necessary considering it's Gorb. And he's down on his third phase already, so let's just wrap this up, shall we? There we are. Now, Brooding Mawlek is a bit of an odd duck. We have, of course, done this fight before, and I have frightfully little to say about this as well, so I'm just going to go ahead and meet you guys in the Ascended one. Now, just about every single boss in the entire game is going to get an increase in HP when you fight them on Ascended or Radiant compared to Attuned. Mawlek is an exception to that, and still has only 1050 HP. The big difference is, of course, ouch, the new arena here, and Mawlek is not constrained at all, yikes, to the central platform, and that can make everything here quite a bit more difficult. Luckily for us, we do have the ability to Shade Cloak if they get too close to us, and I want to show off, just for the sake of it, the Dream Nail dialogue on this guy. Ouch. Assuming I don't die first. There we go. Where are they? Do they hear me? And the last one, which I can't, not really confident of showing off, is Alone. And as long as we're talking about it, I hear this beast crying out sometimes as I prowl the caverns, although I've never actually laid eyes on it. Who or what is it calling for? As far as I can tell, its voice is never answered. It's a ferocious but extremely social creature. It becomes aggressive if not able to mingle with its own kind. Yeah, I didn't think you'd end up feeling sorry for the Brooding Mawlek of all things, did you? But now that you feel nice and sad for it, let's go ahead and fight its Radiant form. And this is definitely the toughest one of the non-Oro and Mato set in that first Pantheon. Which is probably the most qualified statement I've ever made about a boss's difficulty. But ultimately, there isn't too much that she can do to you if you are smart about your nail pogos and your descending darks. The fact that she doesn't get an HP boost over her attuned form, it's probably a bit of a disservice to her difficulty. But that one's that. Now, speaking of Oro and Mato, now it's time for the tough one. Now it's time to get funky. Let's see if we can learn some dialogue from... maybe not. There we go. Whatever it takes, I'll prove myself. I wonder to whom. Probably Sly? Maybe your brothers? My path is mine alone. So, on the subject of Oro and Mato, we don't know too much about them, but we do know they had a feud that caused them to become estranged after they spent their time training together. So this fight here is actually a pretty cool thematic instance of what they would be like if they didn't have a feud, or what they would be like if they set their differences aside. So that's pretty cool, I must say. Now, as evidenced by my single mask, these guys are tough. And in Ascended difficulty, this gets much, much more difficult. Oro himself starts out with 800 HP, and that's just to start. Or I should say, he has 800 HP in his first phase. So focus up, we've got quite a bit to deal with here. I wish you'd stop dash slashing, that is not my favorite thing for you to do. Alright, now in phase 2, they both have 1,000 HP to take down. This takes care of the HP differential that they had in their attuned difficulty, which is quite a problem for us. Because essentially, oh, I need soul right now. Ouch, uh-oh. Which is quite an issue for us, because something that made them a little bit easier was the fact that Oro had so much less HP than his brother come phase 2, and it made it quite easy to, ow! Made it quite easy to take one down before the other and end up just being a 1v1 again. Here, that's really not the case. We have an endurance test and 2,800 health? Holy cow, are you kidding me? That is another level. And on their own makes them the tankiest boss that we have fought up to this point. But that does it there. I wonder which one this is. I wonder if we're even going to find out. Are you going to do a nail up before I take you down? You are. Oh, this is Mato still. Interesting. I still took them out in essentially the set order that they normally would be. Go ahead and give the Duel Masters a bow. They did hit me twice, so I just got to get that all done without getting hit only 2 less times. Against Nailmaster Oro, against him solo, again, feel free to completely abuse your, oh, maybe not. As I was saying, against Oro solo, feel free to completely abuse your Shade Cloak. Anything that he does with this 1-2 slash is going to be much easier to dodge, and you can get right back into things. For a fight like this, where it's a lot of HP, patience is a lot harder to see the value of. If you take this first phase slow, it's going to take you a really long time to even get to the phase where things actually start getting difficult. On the other hand, it is a very good idea to do something I haven't done here, and that is save up a lot of soul on the first round so that you can, oh shoot, use a lot of it to more easily take down the brothers. And to that end, I am going to go ahead and equip Soul Eater once again. As a reminder, if you ever want to overcharm, all you have to do is try and jam a charm into a space that is less charms than it costs, or less charm notches than it actually costs. And if you do that 5 times, then eventually the limit will break. Which is a really cool detail. Now, with Soul Eater equipped, it only takes 2 hits for us to gain the ability to do another attack, which is quite a lot and very, very welcome. Brothers always fight together. Oops, that was a bit of a waste. Come on, gentlemen. Alright, so once again, the pattern of their attack is the most important thing. Stay on the outside of them whenever possible. The dash slash from off screen is going to be one of the most dangerous things to you. So just, I recommend playing with good volume so you can hear that charge up sound as well. That can make quite a difference. Alright. Oh dear, we're in between. Okay. Okay. Alright, so far so good. In again, out again. You just gotta take this fight like the tides. Flow in, flow out. Yike! Okay, we're good. We're good, we're good. So far, we're doing alright. I know there are mods in this game that people like to download that make it so you can see HP values. And this fight is definitely something I can see the advantage of on that. Especially since it would actually help you focus on a brother that is not, the brother that's more weakened. But that does it for that. Thank you, my masters. So that's all 10. Essentially, once you have beaten all of the bosses in a Pantheon on Radiant, there is no question whatsoever that you'll be able to beat the Pantheon itself. And that is the goal here. And I do want to draw quick attention to something that is on the challenge. You have the ability to apply bindings to yourself. This is interesting. Bindings are essentially restrictions that you can place on yourself to make the fight significantly harder. So we've got 4. We've got the mask bindings, the soul bindings, the nail bindings, and the charm bindings. The mask bindings reduce the maximum amount of masks that we can have at a given time. Down to 4. It'll be 5 if you have Fragile Heart equipped. Or maybe 6. 5 doesn't seem right. I'm gonna have to check that. Soul decreases the maximum amount of soul you can hold at one time down to 33, or a third of the base. Charms makes it so that you cannot have any charms equipped whatsoever. And Nail decreases your nail's damage down to half, I think. It makes all of these fights way harder. Even Vengefly King here is taking a long time. If you want these fights to go any faster than a millennium, you're going to have to use some soul significantly well, especially if you have all 4 bindings on at once. It makes everything very, very, very difficult. There is something pretty nice that you get if you do manage to take on a lot of binding challenges, but there's no reward for taking on multiple at once. Nothing tangible anyway. So, if you want to, say, equip Heart and just bind your shell, you can definitely mitigate the nerf that it is to your overall limit. Now we have 6, which is a lot more manageable. But that is a lot of Godhome, and I think more than enough for one episode. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. In the next episode, we are going to go ahead and leave this gaudy golden place and venture back out into the greater world of Hallownest and finally take care of some things that perhaps I've put off for a touch too long. See you guys then.